Hello, everybody. Welcome. Tesla is down 3.5%. Overall markets have recovered. Dow Jones down slightly. NASDAQ just turned positive. S&P 500 is flat. Sawyer says New Hampshire's Dartmouth College to transition over half of its campus security fleet to Tesla Model Ys, according to a Drive Tesla Canada article. In other news, Minnesota has introduced a $2,500 EV rebate for new electric vehicles and a $600 rebate for used EVs. Which EVs qualify? Vehicles may be new or used. Vehicles must be either electric or plug-in hybrid. Vehicles must be purchased or leased on or after May 25. Vehicles must be titled in Minnesota. New vehicles must have a base MSRP of $55,000 or less. Used vehicles, purchase price of $25,000 or less. So that's a major rebate introduced by Minnesota. In another news, Hertz has paused plans to buy tens of thousands of EVs from Polestar this year, the head of electric vehicle brand said. In 2022, Hertz agreed to buy 65,000 Polestar cars over 5 years in a deal. According to Sawyer, Tesla has brought the matte black Cybertruck to the Worlds of Wheels Auto Show in Kansas. And in other news, Rivian will unveil its next generation R2 EV platform on March 7th. This is the platform that will enable lower cost vehicles, according to the company. Britain sold its 1 millionth battery electric vehicle in January. In other news, German software company SAP will no longer source its company cars from Tesla due to unpunctual deliveries and price fluctuations. SAP Fleet Manager said Tesla's prices fluctuate more than those of other manufacturers, which makes planning more difficult and poses a higher risk for the company, according to a Reuters article. Next piece of news, Piper Sandler has cut its Tesla price target to $225 per share, down from $295 per share, citing an aging product lineup. They also trimmed their 2024 delivery estimate by around 11.5% to 1.93 million units. According to Inside EV's article, the 2025 Porsche Taycan charges from 8% to 80% in just 16 minutes. And in final news, Australia has proposed new vehicle emissions reduction targets effective January 1, 2025. Automakers must sell enough zero-emission cars or buy emission credits from other car makers like Tesla, BYD, etc., which have met the targets. All right, that's the news of the day. From now on, we're gonna start with some macro overviews, then read a bunch of news that came out in the last 24 hours, and then we're gonna dig into whatever people want to dig into. Now, I'm working on my diction. What do you think? Oh, hold on. Let me say that again. What do you think?
I don't notice any difference yet, but I'm sure you're trying.
I am trying. I'm doing tongue twisters, my practices, watching YouTube videos on how to say things a little better.
Can you say Peter Piper picked a pickled pepper?
If you write it to me, I can say it. They also said the number one advice that everybody's giving is pick somebody whose speech you appreciate, who speak clearly, and imitate them every morning when they get up. Get a recording of them of a few minutes, and every morning when you get up, repeat what they say exactly how they say it. And I thought of you. I was like, wow, I can actually use machine recordings because I have them. And I can repeat what he says the way he says because I think your English is perfect.
Thank you. I guess I'm a little disturbed by this. the fact that you probably stare in them. Actually, I heard you bought some of the Apple Vision goggles, and that you project my image on there as you talk to mimic me, just not only how I speak, but also my facial gestures. And I think that's going a bit too far. But still, I guess I will take the compliment. I originally had a Midwestern accent, I think, from all my time living in various countries and places in the US that I've kind of minimized that accent. So it might be a kind of global American accent now.
Well, the accent is not the problem. I think I'm having difficulty pronouncing TH sounds as well as R sounds, like red leather, yellow leather. Doesn't come naturally to me if I'm practicing. Reggie?
Yeah, I'd like to say, now tomorrow will be official proud owner of well, I guess my wife, a Tesla Model Y.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
It was a pretty good deal. Just couldn't
Co-
couldn't pass it up.
All right. Congrats, man. Couldn't be happier. Thanks for sharing with us. All right. Machine, what's going on with you? What's new?
Well, I would say I still would buy more if the share price went down. I had a plan to buy a bit more aggressive calls at 175, but I was busy this morning, so I missed it. I would say that's kind of the trading aspect. From the overall sentiment, obviously, everyone here is down because they're reacting to the stock price, but I wouldn't care about the share price going down so much on its own. I don't think really much has changed from the company's perspective now versus a month ago or 2 months ago. So it's kind of funny to see a massive drop in share price, which I predicted, but the sentiment changing. Nothing's fundamentally changed. I mean, they weren't making necessarily a lot of money, but I think the one thing that kind of bothers me is the CEO right now. It's making me a little nervous about long tail risk around the company, which I'm not prepared for right now. And what I mean is, outside of his, you know, drastic acts of what seems to be drastic acts of, trying to reincorporate the company somewhere else, which you could argue is not a big deal. The threats about needing 25%, and there was some discussion elsewhere about how a year ago there was some like request for information where they basically on this trial probably knew the outcome, what it was going to be, and that was the time that he incorporated and found XA.ai, and not good signs about thinking about the long-term aspects of being CEO at Tesla. And so that is now an uneasy feeling in my stomach about that risk. Um, Not that anything will happen now, but just that's something that if it actually did happen would cause a sudden massive drop in share price, in my opinion. And I don't really want to talk about it. If no one wants to talk about it, that's fine. But that's what's on my mind.
Well, before you said I don't want to talk about it, I was going to ask you about that. But if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. But the question was going to be, what do you think? So everybody actually says the same thing. A lot of people agree with you and feel share those feelings that they feel uneasy about what's going on with Elon's compensation, some of the tweets. But so I think you're kind of on the same boat with a lot of people there. Um,
Do you have a question?
the question is, what do you think would happen to stock if Elon left? Let's say in the short term. Let's talk about short term first. What do you think would happen to the stock price if Elon all of a sudden said, you know what, we couldn't come to an agreement, and I'm taking my talents somewhere else?
I was thinking about this over the weekend. I would say, at minimum, a 50% drop. Well, no, let me rephrase that. At minimum, a 33% drop, up to 50% drop. And the way I came up with those numbers
Fibonacci.
is is random number generator. That's how I came up with them. I think about how much of the evaluation is based on expectation of future earnings, and a lot of those are avenues which haven't been even realized yet. And I think a lot of that is based on sentiment of trust in the CEO. And I don't think that those aspects, if he leaves, would be valued nearly as much. So if you took current day earnings, um, and possible earnings growth over the next year, if you just looked at that, right? I mean, this stock would just be valued at like, I don't know off the top of my head, it would be like $100 or less, right? Just based on how much money they make now, how much money they make next year, sort of reasonable growth. And everything on top of that is based on these bigger, bigger aspects, robotaxi, Optimus, etc. And if he goes, those will be massively devalued. I have no, that I'm highly confident of that. Now, how much that contributes to the share price is somewhat debatable, but I would say it's a few hundred billion. And so I think that would be almost instantly um, removed in the course of a week or 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good, I see your reasoning. That's probably a good estimate. But let's hear what Omar also says. Omar, welcome. What do you think would happen to the Tesla stock price if Elon couldn't come to terms on his compensation package and left?
Well, the stock would go down. I think that's pretty much a given. I don't think it's going to happen, but there would be a massive move to the downside, obviously.
Thank you. So you agree that directionally with Machine put some specifics around how much it would go down, shared his reasoning. Do you have an estimate of how much it would go down? Or when you say, I don't think it's going to happen, is that a 0% probability you're assigning, or is it like unlikely?
I mean, I'd give it like maybe a 3% chance of happening or something like that. But so there's a few different kinds of departures, right? So you can have an amicable departure. That's obviously preferable to the market. If you have a contentious departure, which it sounds like this is kind of what that would be, then that is even worse, right? Like you saw Elon's ability to say, "Hey, okay, we're buying Twitter. Can some of you guys come help me? Take a look at the code, review employees, whatever." In a contentious breakup, you could have potentially poaching of employees, him trying to screw over the company, him dumping his shares, that kind of thing. And that's potentially another level of risk compared to an amicable departure.
Machine, do you agree with all that?
Yeah, I think so. It's not clear to me if it's amicable. And there was talk, for instance, that maybe he steps down as CEO and he's just chief product officer or some other title. Um, why he would do that? Because the reason he would leave is because he doesn't have enough equity in the big um, picture, uh, long-term product pipelines that he believes can be highly valuable. Robotaxi and the AI, applied AI on hardware, Optimus, etc. And he would simply want to do those things somewhere else. And so I just don't see how he would be motivated to be in charge of those things at Tesla if he's actually going to go somewhere else where he can own more of it and promote it there, recruit people there. So it's hard for me to see, like, it can be amicable in terms of no one says anything bad, but I don't see how he stays on and also doesn't start a competitor. Like it just seems like he wants to have an AI company that is going to handle a lot of these big pipelines and products and have ownership of it. And if it's not Tesla, it's going to be somewhere else. And if it's somewhere else, that's not good for Tesla. And it seems like it's going to be XAI. That's his hedge.
I mean,
Okay.
this is a ridiculous conversation. He's
Hold
obviously not
on.
going to leave Tesla.
Well,
Like,
I think everyone agrees with you on that, right? Everyone agrees with you that it's highly unlikely that Elon would leave Tesla. And I think the estimates I've heard range from 0% likely to, 10, 11% likely. That's all I've heard. And you said 3, so you're kind of on the lower end of the median. But everyone agrees with you on that. But it is a risk. Like it's not 0%, right? It's not 0%. It's maybe a couple percent, maybe 5, 10%. It's probably good to talk about. Now, on the other hand, let's talk about compensation structure. Machine, what do you think will be the comp structure that appeases both the shareholders, the board, and also Elon? And I guess we have to also think about courts. What do you think that looks like?
I'm not an expert in this area. I don't know Texas law, what can be done in Texas. I think the thing that would appease everyone the most would be if his increase in ownership of the company, or excuse me, increase in control of the company doesn't go proportionally with increased dilution to the same level. I don't think people, the shareholders, the board would want to dilute the company so much that it would take to get him to 25% ownership just via shares. And so I think the structure would have to be somehow he gets increased control through a second level of class of shares, which I know you can't. Like I thought in Delaware you couldn't do right once the company is already formed and went IPO. But I don't know in Texas. Like to me, that would be the way that would be most friendly to everyone. I just don't know if you can do that in Texas. I find the just diluting everyone to get them 25%. There's gonna be a lot of resistance to that.
I mean, if the alternative is that he leaves, even if you hear some resistance, it's going to happen.
I
Go
mean,
ahead.
yeah, no, I'm not, saying it wouldn't. I just think I don't know. There'd be a lot of lawsuits, a lot of commotion. Maybe it still happens. It just doesn't seem like that would be a pleasant road to go down, in my guess. But yes, would it be better than him leaving? Yeah, I think so. In terms of the valuation of the company, yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Omar, you'd like to add to this conversation?
I just think people are just focusing on a lot of noise. I don't think Elon's going to leave Tesla. I don't think this is really all that relevant. The reason why he wrote that tweet is simply because he was talking to the lawyers in the case, and they said, look, she doesn't think that you deserve this compensation plan. She doesn't think that it was fair because she thinks that you love Tesla so much that you were never going to leave. Even though he said, I'm going to leave after the Model 3 ramp. She says, but then he said, I would always be in there in some capacity, blah, 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 blah. So she said, you're not really going to leave Tesla. So this is not really needed to incentivize you. So he was talking to the lawyers. They were talking about this issue and what to move forward. They already told him he was going to lose the case before he lost it. They're smart. They figured it out. So they said, look, you're probably going to lose. This is why you're going to lose. This is what she's going to say. And so you need to basically set up a framework for this to be justified because legally, the directors have a fiduciary obligation to the shareholders. They must give a fair compensation plan. They cannot overcompensate you. They need to give you really the minimum of what is necessary to meet those objectives. So you need to provide a justification for that. And I think that's pretty much why he made the tweet. It doesn't really mean that, he's going to leave or anything like that, but the justification needs to be there that he needs to be incentivized, or else, well, why not build it under XAI where he has control? Why not build it under X where he has control? Why not build it under SpaceX? So that's sort of a legal justification he's trying to provide. Now, in reality, this guy owns billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of Tesla stock. Okay. You see these people in the room freaking out over their 5 shares. Imagine what this guy feels like with $100 billion of Tesla stock. You think he's just going to let someone else do it after everything they've done for years with FSD? Just, okay, whatever. Optimus, someone else will figure it out. I don't think so. He needs to, from a legal perspective, say, yes, I could leave, I could go somewhere else, but, and, I want to have control over the company. But again, this is really all just sort of drama, noise that's probably going to be worked out in very mundane legal ways that aren't all that relevant. I think, if anything, this has just shown how committed he really is to Tesla. I mean, he wants a bigger equity stake, he wants control. He understands how important the technology they're developing is going to be. So there does seem to be a lot of
Right.
confusion about it. And honestly, I didn't get it either until we found out this court decision. Now it all makes sense. And, he said he's talking to the lawyers. The lawyers probably told him to write this tweet in essence to provide the legal justification for their appeal or any further sort of action on this.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Omar, thank you for clarifying and articulating it. If Meta has any comments on the topic, he's welcome to share. If not, we can switch to FSD. And if Wes wants to also come up, he's welcome as well. Meta?
I have a quick question. When Omar, when you're talking about the tweet, are you talking about the tweet where you said that would be nice in response to he should be compensated?
I'm talking about the reply to Yashu where he went into more detail about it. And he said, I'm uncomfortable growing Tesla to be an AI and robotics leader unless I have some control.
Oh yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's also like I'm just coming from a personal perspective, not a legal or other perspective. But I think it's okay to say Tesla's mission was sustainable energy. While Optimus is easy to do because of the way FSD is being done, I don't know if that's like required as part of the mission. So if we're expanding the scope of the mission, it's okay for the CEO to say, well, if I'm going to expand the scope of the expectations that that you have of me to achieve yet another impossible goal, AGI, I want to be compensated for that and I want to have some control over it.
I mean, I really see it as in my best interest for Musk to have 25% control of the company, whether it's through super voting shares or whatever. I want Elon to be making the critical decisions, not Ross Gerber, not Gary Black, not Vanguard. I want Elon Musk to make the decisions. I want long term shareholders and long term thinking driving the strategic plan of this company, not short term pressures and stock prices. All these dumb fucks and their dumb ideas. Oh, we need to buy back the stock. Oops. Well, turns out we were actually going into some really tough times. That would have been a horrible idea. Oh, we need to split the stock. Oh, that didn't work. Well, we should have done a bigger split. Oh, we need to advertise. That'll fix everything. Oh, okay. Well, they started advertising and it didn't change anything, but that's because they're running the wrong kind of ads. Not an online ad, not a YouTube ad. You need a Super Bowl ad. It needs to be bigger. They need to be spending more. These are the guys who, think they really have some great advice to give to pump up the stock price. And that's all they care about is really their stupid idea to pump up the stock price and not actually building a great business long term. So I want Elon to have control, not majority control. Like he said, 25%. We can still overrule him. If he goes crazy, we can still fire him if, 50% of the shareholders vote against him. But it's really in our best interest as shareholders. I feel that it maximizes the shareholder value of the company. So it really doesn't cost us anything. And if they say that we cannot pay him, even though 73% of us voted for it, if they're taking our ability away to compensate the CEO, and you may say, hey, look, it's too much, but I mean, this guy's the richest guy in the world. He has hundreds of billions of dollars. $1 million, $10 million, even $100 million is not going to make a fucking difference in his life, right? So we need an equity compensation plan that actually gives him what he wants, which is not even more money, but just control, just an assurance that after building Tesla into an AI and robotics giant, he won't get fired because Ross Gerber had a bad day or something.
All right. Thank you, Omar. That was really, really good.
Yeah, I think Omar should officially be the person that summarizes at the end because he does a great job of it.
That works for me. Works for me.
I'm uploading a video I made on the recall right now. This thing makes me so angry, honestly. Just seeing them cover this completely backwards. Painting over the air updates as a bad thing when it's actually a safety benefit. And I put all the other automakers when they had the same exact issue with their indicators being too small, and they just said, well, we're not going to fix it. They petitioned NHTSA to not fix it because they don't have over the air update capabilities. So anyway, I'm going to put that video up soon.
Omar, have you looked into the actual guidance, the vehicle user interface guidance? Because the terminology of it, nowhere from what I can see says requirement, even though there is a requirement to comply with the guidance itself doesn't say that's required. And in other parts of the guidance, it has these things are required. If not, I can
Yeah,
just
I mean, that's neither here nor there.
Wes, how are you? How's everything going?
Hey, okay. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, of course. Have you guys been following V12 posts? Omar's posting full videos on X, on YouTube. Lots of discussion going on, lots of news coming out that Tesla is working on actually smart summon. What are your thoughts, generally speaking, Wes, on all of that?
Yeah, I've been watching Omar's videos, and thanks again, Omar, for posting great videos. And it seems like your build hasn't changed, and you're still kind of experiencing the same type of controls and path planning and all that good stuff. And it still seems pretty good. I'm basically just waiting kind of on the next build or somebody else somewhere else to post a video, which I haven't seen yet. It'll be awesome to see actual smart summon at some point. I'm excited about that, but kind of more interested and excited about the next drop of 12. It's been a while, and I was hoping for faster iteration, but take what we can get.
Yesterday, I drove 6 hours through this crazy storm on FSD Beta 12, and it just did phenomenally. Even in some very, very low visibility, where like I can't even see the lane lines. And I'm like, where are we going? And the thing can somehow see the lane lines. So it's just a huge sort of security blanket. I didn't see the red hands issue until the very end of the drive when it got super, super severe. But overall, it did pretty good for that drive, so I was pretty impressed. There was also some debris that got knocked into the road due to the heavy winds, such as like things falling off trees and stuff. And I did notice it actually tries to avoid debris if it can that's in the road, which is kind of an interesting thing I hadn't seen before.
Did you drive around in the rain at night?
Yes, it was all about 50% day, 50% night. And it was very strong in the rain and the night. So it's not perfect. It does have that red hands issue sometimes. The build still hasn't changed in that regard, but I've considered it to be very strong performance. Considering, I mean, this was like such a bad storm that they sent an emergency alert to our phone saying this is a life-threatening, storm. Don't go outside, which might be a little dramatic, but I found it pretty impressive that FSD 12 could function in that environment. And yeah, we are seeing a lot more work on actually smart summon. I did notice my car kind of like parking at the end of the drive a few times. I feel like that's kind of like maybe an issue or something. Maybe like something slipped into the training set or something that they didn't intend. But we are seeing work in the Tesla app updates on actual smart summon. So that should return both dumb summon and smart summon to vision vehicles. It includes a stronger, occupancy network. It's based on the V12 architecture, and that should hopefully be rolling out potentially with the first V12 build. Um, that goes to customers. I did also hear that apparently the recall issue has delayed the rollout of V12 in that they can't send it out to more customers until they patch that icon size, believe it or not.
That shouldn't take too long, though, right? That's a pretty easy merge. There should be minimal
Yeah,
conflicts. Yeah.
yeah,
The
of course.
the thing I was going to ask is, how much do you think Elon had to pay the people who control the weather so that they could test rain in California?
Yeah, I think this is gonna, I was just thinking when I was driving yesterday, this is gonna be amazing for gathering data for the training set. Um, really, really crazy weather. I mean, it's still raining right now. So, yeah, hopefully the Auto Wiper team and the FSD Beta 12 team had a lot of triggers set for yesterday. And, I think the whole world is really going to benefit. It finally rained in California. So auto wipers might now work for the whole world. And, I had a mixed results with auto wipers yesterday. It was good on my first drive, which I recorded, which is pinned to my page right now. But later in the storm, you saw, especially in the very heavy rain, it would often kind of not be enough. So I had to manually turn it up to the 4, the highest speed setting, and just keep it there and then turn it off. So still not perfect, especially like in those storms, you don't want auto wipers to be turning off or going slower than you need. But I think now that they've moved to an end-to-end architecture for training deep rain, it should be getting better a lot faster. So let's see what happens after this latest batch of training data came in.
We also saw a point release go out, even though you haven't received the update, which obviously they manually sent to you, right? So I don't think we should read into the speed of updates that you're receiving as a negative sign. Would you agree with that?
I haven't seen any updates to anything, right? I'm still on the first FSD 12 build.
Oh,
So we're,
sorry. Didn't we
yeah,
see something in Tesla Scope that was not sent to your car? But
yeah,
yeah, okay.
yeah, not sent to my car yet. But yeah, hopefully we should be ready for that to roll out pretty soon.
Yeah, like I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't send you point releases and they just, you got the point release that goes wide potentially or wider.
How wide do you think the next update is going to be?
10x. So if they have 100 people, 1,000 people.
And then go 10x every few weeks, kind of thing, if everything goes according to plan?
Um, maybe 10x each time, but for me personally, I would probably you taper it off. So 10x, 4x, 2x, or you go 10x, 5x, 4x, 2x, whatever. But each time you're expanding to a bigger pool, you still go a little bit less just because your March of Nines is gonna probably be revealing problems every time you go wider. And then as you've burned out, say 80 to 90% of those problems, and everybody's working on the other problems, that's when you start expanding. So you just want to control how fast you're finding more problems.
Before we go to Wes, if anyone in the audience has any questions, whether on X or YouTube, you may leave a reply with your question and I'll try to get it in there. Wes, go ahead.
Big question for you guys. If you had to guess, what do you think, what part of the model or training set do you think they're working on right now to address the concerns and the issues that Omar has seen? Curious on your thoughts.
Um, if I was working on this space, the thing that I would do is I'd be building out a system to allow different mixture set creation. So you have a whole bunch of data sets, right? So they have the data set of good drivers that, or quote unquote, NHTSA drivers, let's say, that stop at stoplights. You have a data set of people who've driven a lot in the rain, data set of snow, various other things. You create various data sets based on known problem spaces by creating triggers to go sample data sets. For PII reasons, maybe you have to drop the video after a certain amount of time, GDPR and all that kind of stuff. So you have these triggers constantly resourcing more data. And then you create mixtures, which are basically going to say what percentage of each of these data sets do you sample to create your training data while keeping your overall token count constant. That then lets you use the data sets in various different ways. After that framework has been built, I think the next thing they need to do is build out experimentation frameworks so that their data scientists can try different theories and try different things. And that's what they want to accelerate. So it's not necessarily the collection of the data, I think that would be hard. I think that's pretty trivial. I think it's the experimentation framework, it's the simulation data, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's probably where these cycles are going.
I think people are going to be blown away. I'm very happy with FSD 12. There's a few minor issues like the red hands. I think number one, they want to be massaging really the occupancy network data set. I mean, there is no occupancy network, but sort of the occupancy network that's internal to it. I would want to show it more examples of close-up interactions, edge cases revolving around those sort of close-up interactions, and really fine-grained movements, and really getting that internal occupancy network above the old occupancy network by just showing it more clips. And then, rain and precipitation, I think that seems to be an issue where they're throwing up red hands. It seems to be speed limited more than the other version. I could be mistaken about that, but I feel that it's lowering the speed for weather more than it did with V11. That could be kind of a safety guardrail. So that's one thing I'd like to see improved, as well as, the red hands issue resolved. And then there's a couple of minor issues I saw in San Francisco, like the stopping at the stop sign until the light turns green and stuff, that I imagine will be pretty easy to fix in the next build or so. So, yeah, I'm really excited to see what the delta is between this first V12 build and the second V12 build, to really get a sense of what their capability is to improve this thing. And I mean, it's almost just really fucking good, you know? Like, it's you can just smell it, where you're gonna be doing most of your drives, curb to curb without intervention. It'll be able to go in the parking lot. It'll be able to find a parking spot. It'll be able to pull out. Like, it's right there. It's so close that, we can touch it. But it may take a year or two to get to driverless level reliability, but in the interim, we're going to start actually experiencing these curb to curb, very smooth drives, parking lot to parking lot. And that's going to be a lot of fun, especially like actually smart summon. I'm super excited for that. Because even with the old smart summon, you try it in parking lots and people like freak out. They're like, oh my God, that's so cool. There's no driver. And, when I'm in a Waymo, like, you see people always taking pictures. Oh my God, no driver. So the no driver thing is really something that turns heads. And if you have like Teslas with FSD Beta 12 actually navigating Costco parking lots and picking people up, that is going to be the biggest viral ad campaign for FSD we've ever seen.
Before, one last question to Omar on FSD. I just want to remind everybody to please go to YouTube and subscribe to my channel. When I get to 1,000, I can add chapters to videos, which make it easier for people to watch. When I get to 500 subscribers, I can start doing live streams. But I have to reach those milestones before those are possible. So if you could please go to the top of your pages, that pinned tweet at the top, follow the account, like and repost to spread the word. I would highly appreciate it. Final question on FSD, unless if anybody else has any questions. Omar, how is the parking when FSD completes the route and pulls up to the curb? What would you rank the performance from 1 to 10?
Well, it doesn't really park. It kind of just pulls over. And I've seen it go into parking lots and just kind of pull over. So it's not like it's consistently parking every time. Like 2 times it kind of parked. And I use park loosely. I mean, it was between the lines of the parking spot. and it kind of pulled over, but it was also kind of like, okay, did it just kind of turn or is it actually parking, right? Like it's not like it parked and then backed up and did that. So it's not like really parking. It almost just kind of seems like in some videos in the training set someone just parked after and it might have kind of picked up on that motion somehow or something. Um but it's not really like the full-fledged auto park feature that I think they're about to ship.
Omar, would you say that it's pulling over for you to get out safely versus it's parking?
Yeah, like, so it can pull over to the side of the road, but it also seems to sometimes have this ability to kind of pull over in a like it can pull over into a parking spot, if that makes any sense. Right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of just programmed when you get there, pull over. Or not programmed, but that's just what it does.
Well, let me see if I can ask a different way. Even if it blocks a driveway, even if it's not in a legitimate parking spot, is it pulling over in a place where you would want like an Uber driver to pull over?
Yeah, exactly. The place where I would pull over. It looks for a little gap in the road and will kind of pull over there, or else we'll just kind of go close to the parked cars.
Right. And that is actually a feature that needs to be built, right, for robotaxi. You can't have robotaxi refusing to drop you off unless it finds a parking spot.
So in that sense, is that comparable, better or worse than Waymo?
Well, I'd say it's better in a way. I mean, Waymo has been pulling over for a long time, obviously, but this is one of my biggest complaints about Waymo is how they sometimes pull over. Like, I live on this street and there's this giant hill, and sometimes they go, "Okay, we're gonna drop you off right at the top of this giant hill." And I'm like, really? Why? My apartment's down there. You could go in front of my apartment and pull over there, but instead you have to go up this giant hill. Or even worse, it'll go down the giant hill and pull over there. It'll say, looking for a safe spot to pull over. And then I got to walk up this giant hill. So Tesla, in my experience, actually just pulls over at the destination. So maybe you could argue like Waymo's handling is actually more sophisticated in that it's kind of like going around to find a spot a little more. But I like the way it works with Tesla right now in that it actually goes to where I want today.
Have you used the like on Waymo that like you can adjust map drop point and then pick like the precise location? Are you talking even after selecting that, or have you not tried that feature?
No, I have tried that feature and it does help with the pickup sometimes, but then for the drop off sometimes it still wants to go up or down the hill for some weird reason. So, I mean, these are like this is one of my biggest complaints with Waymo is it can't always get exactly to where you are to pick you up, and it can't always get exactly to where you need to go to drop off. So there is a little bit of walking before and after. And that like, so if I'm in Union Square or something, it can be really difficult for it to get into Union Square. I might have to walk a couple blocks away to grab one more easily.
Yeah, that's like a feature that Tesla will have that Waymo and others can't, which is, or at least as they're designed so far, can't, which is that the car could come to you, it could drive you where you want to go, and then for the last few minutes of it, you could just take over and drive to the exact spot or wherever it's having difficulty with, and then you could just get out and it would just go away. So, I mean, I think there's a slightly different market for that because there's many, many people who take taxis and other forms of like Uber transportation and are not intoxicated and can drive, but they don't want to deal with parking or they don't have a car.
Yeah, I think this is going to be just from a consumer perspective really huge. So, you've got an FSD version now that's actually smooth and human-like. It still has a little bit of rough edges right now. As I've said, it has more safety critical disengagements. We'll see how future builds go. But what we're really sort of starting to scratch the surface here of this year is you get in the Tesla, or first, you get your phone out, you smart some in the car, it pulls out of the spot and comes to you. You get in, punch in the destination, or maybe you punched in the destination on your phone, You turn on FSD, it drives you to the destination, and it pulls over into a parking spot or it parks in a parking spot. And then you get out, you do whatever you need to do, and then you call it from your phone again. So you could literally get around all day, theoretically, without driving at all. Just using your phone, telling it where you want to go, pushing the button on the wheel to turn on autopilot, and that's it. So this is just unheard of in the car market. And honestly, it's just been super encouraging seeing my roommate get his Model Y. And he used the referral code, so he got the 3 free months of FSD. So we go pick up the car, FSD is just pre-installed on it. The moment we walk into the car for the first time, FSD. And of course, the cameras had to calibrate. But he hasn't been driving in a while. And so he's been using the FSD. He's been using it for about 70% of his miles. It's pretty crazy. And I asked him, well, okay, if we're not able to get another referral for 3 more free months of FSD and you have to pay for it, would you pay 200? And he said, oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, this is just a game changer on long drives and rain. And, he's not an early adopter. He's not a tech person. And he's really liking version 11. Even in the rain and everything, it's been raining like crazy. He's like, "Oh yeah, this is great." And he said, "Oh my God, it's such a different experience in the driver's seat. When I was in the passenger seat with you, it was a little bit scary, but with me in control in the driver's seat, I love this. I see why you're so crazy about it now." So it really is sort of crossing that threshold where it just comes on your Tesla. If you use the referral code, you get 3 free months of FSD, and you can just try it, and consumers are liking it. With version 12, I mean, people are just going to be blown away if they get the new Model 3, the new Model Y, the Cybertruck, and they try this. They're literally not going to believe what they're seeing with the car being able to complete a full drive from them, parking spot to parking spot, without them driving at all.
Meta, what do you think about what Omar just said? Parking spot to parking spot without them driving at all. Are you pushing back or pulling forward your estimates of timeline to robotaxis?
I don't have enough data to make a change at this point. Seeing the dot three go out was encouraging. I think this weekend we didn't see another point release, but that could just be because like they've kind of clamped down on people using Tesla Scope and things like that. So we can't really read into that yet either. But right now, where my thought is, if we don't see some kind of wider release in the next 2 weeks, that's when I would start to get concerned about iteration speed. But before that, I don't really think we can know much. I think the most important thing to me is the development pace, which we don't get direct information on. It's just we're going to have to infer how good the machine that trains the machine is without direct insight, unless they do a presentation on it.
Well, hopefully we'll get a new AI day at some point this year. Omar, do you think we're going to get one? AI Day 2024? Or do you think because Tesla has hired most of the engineers that it needs to achieve FSD and maybe get Optimus to a reasonable level, that's going to stay until 2025?
I do think they will do one. I mean, you can always use more talent, even if it is more sort of training constrained. You definitely want to be recruiting, hiring the best people. A lot of talent and money has been brought into AI with everything we're seeing. So I definitely think it is still important to recruit, bring some new ideas, some great people in. And there's a lot to talk about. I think the real reason why we didn't see an AI day in 2023 wasn't the sort of competitive aspect, although I think that is a factor too. But I think the biggest thing is just that they wanted to get the team focused on FSD Beta 12 and Optimus and not necessarily on their presentations. Once FSD Beta 12 ships to customers and maybe we have some more progress on Optimus, then I can see them discussing a little bit about how they achieve that for recruiting purposes and also just to inform the investor community as well.
Wes, I have a question for you because you've been following these videos and posts and articles on FSD V12 rollout pretty closely.
Yeah.
When it rolls out across the nation, when it kind of goes out to a larger group, would you expect a big difference between what Omar is experiencing in San Francisco and in other parts of the country? Or would you think that the difference in V12 across geographies is going to be smaller than what we've seen in V11?
Yeah, I think it'll be smaller. I don't think they would build something that doesn't scale better than V11. I would find that difficult to believe. And I also think that the iteration speed so far, I kind of agree with Meta, but maybe a little different, that they're probably building an infrastructure so they can iterate quickly once they go wider. Have a infrastructure that allows them to take feedback in quicker and put dot releases out faster. So at least that's what I hope they're working on. But no, I wouldn't expect to see a bigger difference. With no heuristics, you should see better scale. So you just need to find those good training examples and an architecture that utilizes those to their best efficiency with the amount of compute and training that you have. And you should have a model that scales everywhere, at least to the parts of the country that have all of the same rules, which should be everywhere. I would still expect there to be like crazy corner cases. There's certain places that, while I was at Tesla, we looked at a bunch of places in Boston that has these crazy thin roads, one direction, and lights that control them. These very difficult turns that looked different on the map than they were in person. Those types of things that were very, very difficult. So there will be some corner cases still, but at the end of the day, it should scale better. Yeah.
I did drive down to Los Angeles yesterday. I'm here in Los Angeles now. Still California, but very different road topography than San Francisco. I haven't driven today because it's still raining so much, but I think me and my dad are going to go for a V12 drive. He's been really wanting to see V12. So we'll see how it performs in LA and in the rain and have another data point in how it does outside the Bay Area.
Are you gonna let it drive all the way down to LA?
I'm in LA already, so I drove down yesterday, and it did pretty well despite there being some insane storms.
So that's like a 5-hour drive, 6-hour drive.
Yeah, 6 hours.
And how would you say it performed in terms of? I'm gonna ignore when it throws up the red hands, but like outside of when it throws up the red hands, how many interrupts would you say there were?
0. There were speed adjustments, there were wiper adjustments, no takeovers.
That's amazing to hear. And Meta, thanks for asking questions to Omar. You ask questions. Obviously, you have a much deeper knowledge of the topic than I do. And it helps when you ask questions to each other. So I really appreciate that. A quick reminder to go up to the screen and please try to like, repost, and subscribe to my YouTube channel so that when I get to 1,000 subscribers, I can start doing live streams on YouTube. We can do the space both here and YouTube at the same time. And I start getting ad revenue so I can invest into some equipment for better sound, etc. And I can also add chapters to YouTube videos once I get to 1,000 subscribers. So I really appreciate people who subscribe. Any final words, Wes, Meta, or Omar on V12, robotaxis, NVIDIA, compensation, news of the day? We had some price adjustments as well. If you guys want to talk about that, we can talk about that. I have another half hour or so.
I mean, I would just like to say one quick thing about the red hands, if I can.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So I know I think it's very good for Omar to be reminding folks that, hey, it's not ready because it's throwing up the red hands. But I think sometimes maybe folks are interpreting that as like it's really far away. I would personally argue that if it's throwing up red hands in situations that it's not confident about, that's much better than it going through a situation confidently when it's wrong. it also means that they have already implemented triggers, because the heuristic to figure out when to throw up the red hands, which could be based on output from the neural net, but it is a heuristic that uses all the inputs that are coming plus the output from the neural net to decide when to throw up the red hands. That logic is the same logic they would need to put a trigger there to say collect the data that's necessary. So every time the red hands go up, they're getting all the data that's necessary, and that goes up to their servers, and they can then decide, okay, was it a false positive or not, and so on and so forth. Obviously, that's not great for mass use of the product, but that's a good sign, in my opinion, compared to if he said, I had to do this long, long drive, and you had to take over a bunch of different times. So we should still look at V12 with the same lens of first you make it safe, then you make it less interventions, and then you make it comfortable.
Wes,
Say, question meta, something that you said in that. Did you mean to say that they've implemented a heuristic for red hands? Or did you mean that it's just the model's way of saying that it's not confident? In other words, it's just part of the algorithm.
I'm saying I'm pretty sure there'd probably still be some safety controls that are going to be implemented as heuristics, right? So ABS would be an example of that. There's no need to change that. It's kind of like the human drives a car, and then there's safety systems that already exist. So you can have the model learn how to drive like a human and still have the safety systems that already exist, but they're not real time. So as an example for the red hands, it might just say it's gotten too dark. There's a lot of rain. The confidence is falling to a certain level. Right now, our heuristic is when the confidence gets below this threshold, we're going to throw up red hands. Over time, as things are trained, they might learn that, oh, that confidence number that we were at, we were just being too sensitive, and we could actually allow it to fall below 90. Maybe 80 is sufficient, something along those lines.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah, I don't
curious.
see it as a huge issue. Early builds that I see, whether it's 11 or 10 or 9, often throw up red hands. So I see it as kind of just normal.
Yeah, they just drive up the sensitivity of those heuristics.
And in V12, it's interesting to think that it could potentially be, I'm not saying that it is, or maybe you are asserting that it is, but I think it's maybe a percent chance that it's driven by a heuristic. It could just be the output of the overall engine saying it's just below a certain confidence and it doesn't feel like it can proceed. Because there are times where it hesitates quite a bit with nothing in view, or at least no dynamic or occluded dynamic objects in view. So I'm thinking that it's more just a certain layer of the model that's used as a safety control. I would struggle to think that if they've implemented heuristics on top of the output, that even though it might be a policy, I still feel like that would drastically limit the types of experiences that drivers would get. So I could see that literally just being an output of the model itself without any other layers on top of it. And that's potentially why Omar is basically the only one that has it. At least the only one that's able to publicly post.
So I would say, and just hypothesizing here, they could also implement it asynchronously. Right? So if you have asynchronous monitoring, it does not affect your end-to-end experience at all. You have asynchronous monitoring that says for the last minute, the threshold of confidence has been too low. We're going to throw up red hands. So that would be one very simple heuristic. In that example I just gave, it's just looking at the output of the neural net, and it's just running an if condition, so it requires a CPU, and there you have it. Another way you could go around it is you could say, we're doing multitask training. So the model is actually being trained in many different tasks. One of them's like the perception output, one of them's controls, various other things, maybe language of lanes. And then they do transfer learning on this. And part of each of those multitasks is to give a confidence on each of those tasks. And they could just kind of take all of those and say, okay, what is the confidence we need on perception? What is the confidence we need on controls? What is the confidence we need on lane lines, et cetera? And that might be different thresholds. So you can just imagine it like if that's the approach that they take, it could take input from the world, it could take input for controls, it could take input from camera sensors, et cetera. That's very easy to read for a CPU. And it could take specific state information from the model, and it can combine that into a very simple, over this moving average, over this period of time, when this happens, fire a trigger. And since you're going to have to do the trigger on the CPU anyway to like grab video data, grab all that, package it up and send it to the server, I think it makes sense to have it live in the same place.
Omar, I see you pinned something at the top. Would you like to talk to us about it?
Yeah, so this is my video about the Tesla recall and how all the other automakers didn't fix the issue when they had the exact same issue. Over-the-air updates let you fix it. Over-the-air updates are a huge safety benefit, and honestly, you're at risk if you buy a vehicle that doesn't have them. And the media just tells this backwards. They make it seem like it's actually a dangerous thing, when the reality is it's a huge safety benefit other vehicles don't have. Meanwhile, Ford's vehicles are catching fire left and right, exploding. The door opens while you drive. The ignition switch was faulty, so the car would turn off. Then the airbags wouldn't go off if you cried. If you crashed, hundreds of people died. So, yeah, just watch the video and share it.
Wes.
Very cool. I'm looking forward to watching that. And I got a question for you. I don't know if you saw my post, but I noticed on the NHTSA site that you can calculate the percentage of OTA to physical recalls that manufacturers had in 2022. NHTSA put out this data. Granted, it's 2022 and it's over a year old, but it's still interesting that Tesla's recalls, OTA, were greater than 99% of their overall recalls. So 99% were done over the air. And I put together a little, I haven't published it yet because I was still working on it. It's a little difficult to mine out of their data hub, but the other manufacturers are obviously way below that. But I was going to put that together and I'll add that, or I'll just reply to your post. I just want to let you know.
All right, Machine, did you have your hand up earlier?
I just wanted to verify that when you do YouTube videos that we're not going to have to see your face.
No, yeah, definitely. You will not see my face when we do YouTube live videos. Machine, you can go ahead safely subscribe to my channel to support live streams because you will not see my face.
Thank you. That really changes the perspective.
Can Patreon members vote on images that you will overlay on top of Machine's eye in your YouTube videos?
Now, I'm very protective of my speakers. Very protective, as much as he gives me a hard time every now and then. But if you want me to kick Machine off the space, please go up to the top pinned tweet and subscribe to my channel. And if I get 1,000 subscriptions, then I will kick Machine off the space for a day. Machine?
The other three speakers, did they hear the part where you basically said you're going to model your speaking after me and not them? Do you guys feel insulted that you don't have good English?
I'm confident that he's going to have a much higher number before he kicks the rest of us off.
No, he's referring to something I said earlier, I think before you joined, Meta. He's referring to, so I'm actually listening to some diction, pronunciation, enunciation type of YouTube videos to see if I can speak a little more clearly. And uniformly, every single person says at the beginning, pick somebody that you believe speaks clearly, that you want to model after, record or save a recording for a minute or two. And when you wake up every morning, say it exactly how they're saying it. If you do that every morning, that's like number one advice when people are getting diction lessons. So I said, Machine, I think, has really good English, very clear. It's so clear that he comes across as smarter than he actually is. I was like, wow, I can actually, and I have his recordings, so I can repeat. So every morning now, when I wake up, I start to speak like Machine. I
The
go
only
to
pro-
Popeyes for lunch. I got my hair longer. I'm gonna dye my hair blonde or bleach my hair. See how that works out.
the only problem with this is you're going to be speaking to people normally, and it's going to sound like you're eating.
That is the one hole in the whole logic, is the rudeness of which I talk while chewing. I agree. Last point, because I got knocked off earlier when Omar was pontificating for a long period of time about Musk, and I just wanted to say it's not about the Delaware court ruling. It's about him explicitly stating he wants 25% voting control of the company. And so how is he going to get there? That's the main concern. I'm not saying the odds are high. I'm just saying it's a risk, a long tail risk that's not, that makes me a little uneasy right now. Yeah, all these hands up. See, good job, machine, with the question and statement.
Omar and then Meta.
My final thought will be, in these turbulent times when everybody's emotional, focus on the signal and not the noise. So, what's the difference between the signal and the noise? The signal is what gets written in the history book when they're telling the history of how EVs, clean energy, robots, and autonomous electric vehicles came about. And the noise is everything that doesn't make it into the history book. So, in the history book, they'll say maybe, okay, there was AlexNet, the rise of deep learning. This eventually, they started building robots, da da da. What they probably won't write is, well, Tesla ran some ads on YouTube, but some people were saying they should have run a Super Bowl ad. What they probably won't write is, well, the Delaware court, rescinded his thing, but later, a few months, they, voted on a new plan and then that got approved. That's probably a footnote, right? The important things are really the expansion into the market, right? People buying EVs for the first time, record-breaking EV sales, an EV becoming the best-selling car for the first time. That's something that's going to be in the history book. By 2023, the best-selling car in the world was an EV. Da 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 da. And this was the first autonomy self-driving project that launched in Europe, in China, that consumers could buy. Okay, the ramp of 4680 cells. Okay, they ramped 4680 cells that allowed them to supply more vehicles. These are the things that are actually material to history. And people tend to really forget about these things and focus a lot on the drama, focus a lot on the noise. Oh, did Elon do ketamine? Is that why the stock's down? Is it because he tweeted about immigration? Nobody's going to remember any of this. All they're going to remember is that we have a bunch of robots walking around, jerking everyone off.
Meta, would you like to follow that?
It's a hard one to follow. The main thing I was going to say to Machine was, I think you're really underestimating the creativity of lawyers and others, because there's already been people who've pointed out they could create a subsidiary where they put the AI stuff in there, and Elon has control over that. There's dual class shares. They can reincorporate other places. Omar said it way better, but I was just going to say, I think it's just noise to worry about that, frankly.
Everything will work out. Shareholders are supportive. They'll come up with a new plan. They'll get it done. Everything will be fine. And he'll probably continue to be the CEO for at least a few more years.
Great news. We just made it to 500 subscribers on YouTube. 500, we're halfway. Machine, go ahead.
I agree with both their points in general. I'm just saying there's some small risk there that I'm just thinking about. But I think in the end it will all be okay, especially if Omar's robot jerks me off every day.
Maybe Sawyer's robot can jerk off Biden.
I think this is my cue that we probably should end the space. Unless if you guys want to end up in a YouTube short. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for the 500 subscribers. We're halfway to 1,000. At which point I'll be able to add chapters and do YouTube lives. So if you could please go on YouTube and subscribe to my channel, Valley Analyst 1, I would appreciate it. Thanks, Omar. Thanks, Meta. Thanks, Machine. And thank you, Wes. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow.